Welcome to the Mindful Mama Movement podcast. I'm Shannon Kinney-Dew, creator of freespiritlife.com.
And I'm Ashley Walburn, owner of Home Holistic. And together, we are bringing you the Mindful Mama Movement.
Mindful mothering is about nurturing your heart and soul while you nurture your children. It's about consciously awakening to your inner wisdom and being peacefully present as a mama, no matter where you are on your journey. From discovering your newborn to loving and accepting the wonderful people who've left your nest. Our movement is empowering mamas to be authentic and to live inspired lives. We're so happy you're here. Hey everyone, it's Shannon. Welcome to episode 29 of the Mindful Mama Movement podcast. In today's show, we're talking with Christa Melnyk Hines. And this is an awesome episode, really focusing on dealing with technology and how we can create meaningful and deep relationships and connections with our children, with our families, with each other, when technology is so heavily prevalent in our daily life. I love Christa's powerful and very practical tips on how to create space in your life without the technology. She gives examples like creating family time in the evenings right before bedtime where you can all come together and connect. She talks about taking a digital sabbath each week and creating no phone zones. And just lots of really great stuff from all of us as we share our experience with technology, with the different age kids that we have, and how we can enjoy it and embrace it, but also how we can even look at our own life and how we use it. And remember that our kids are modeling our behavior. So just becoming more conscious and aware of how we use technology and how we want our children to use it, but also when we can set it aside, when we can reconnect and use that time for quality connection. It's a great show, and I know you're going to enjoy it. And before I share more about who Christa is, I also just want to thank you for your support. We continue to get amazing reviews, comments, personal stories about how our show has touched you and your life. So thank you. You reaching out and sharing that makes everything worth it. The show is so near and dear to our hearts, and we just love that we're touching yours too. So if you want to join our community, look us up on Facebook, look us up in groups, Mindful Mama Movement group on Facebook. That's where you're going to connect with moms from all over the world as we explore what it means to be a mindful mama. Also, for the show notes, visit mindfulmamamovement.com to learn more about Ashley and her yoga studio. Visit homeholistic.com, and to learn more about me and my life coaching services, and also my really special online community called the Live Freely Circle. This is where moms like you are gathering from around the world, and we're learning how to nourish and nurture our heart and soul so that we can have more energy to give to our family, to our work, to everything that's important to us. You can find out more at freespiritlife.com. Okay, so Christa Melnyk Hines is an award-winning freelance journalist, author, and connection expert. Through her books, articles, blog, and newsletter, she inspires today's busy families to grow happier and stronger through healthy, meaningful connections. Christa is the author of Happy, Healthy, and Hyperconnected: Raise a Thoughtful Communicator in a Digital World. This is a guide for parents interested in nurturing a versatile set of social skills in our kids who are right now so charmed by the digital electronics that they're using. She's also the author of Confidently Connected, A Mom's Guide to a Satisfying Social Life, which helps moms build and sustain a thriving, balanced social life that supports your emotional health. She's full of wisdom, and we're excited to share it with you today. So let's get right to the show.
Hi, Christa. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me here.
Well, we are so happy to have you and to be visiting with you today. Tell us a little bit more about who you are, what stage of motherhood you are in, and what you do.
Yeah, you bet. I'm a freelance journalist, and I'm an author. And a lot of what I do, I write a lot of articles related to motherhood and pregnancy. A lot of it relates to creating meaningful relationships, particularly in the digital age. There's so many different facets now with how we relate to one another. So I love talking, I love writing about those topics, about, beating isolation and raising our social skills. And then, creating the life that we want to have to feel, good and have a strong family life. I am a mom. I have two boys. Their ages 9 and 11. And my husband and I have lived in the Kansas City area now for, gosh, almost 10 years. So we're really enjoying it here.
Well, that's great. I'm excited. We're going to get into both of those topics. But before we do, we'd like to know, we always love hearing from other mamas what it was like becoming a mom for the first time. And I'm also curious if there's some sort of memory that stands out to you in those early days, especially your early years, that you realized momhood wasn't as easy as we once thought.
Yeah, absolutely. It's somewhat of a blur,
Mm-hmm.
I before I had my oldest son, I suffered two pregnancy losses. So becoming a mother when I finally had my 11-year-old son, my son who's now 11, it was kind of a mixture of feeling really terrified and also total exhilaration. I'd never felt that kind of love for another human being before in quite that way. So in many ways, I was constantly worried about him. I wanted to make sure I was doing this right. I have a little bit of a type A personality. So it was like, I wanted it to be perfect. I wanted everything to go well and do everything right. Well, of course, motherhood isn't like that. It's different every single day. And you kind of have to learn to roll with it a little bit. So in the beginning, I remember feeling very worried and anxious and kind of like almost like imposter syndrome. I was like, when are they going to find out that I have no experience in this parenting thing? You know what I mean? So I often was calling the pediatrician, asking questions, why isn't he sleeping? Why is he crying so much? What am I doing wrong? And I think when I really realized how challenging it was going to be, I think I always knew motherhood was going to be hard. But around the time, after those first few weeks coming home from the hospital, we were sort of getting settled in. Then my mother left to go back home. My mother-in-law left to go back to her home. And my husband left for a business trip. And all of a sudden, I'm sitting there and it's just me and my son. And it was totally overwhelming. And I realized that I didn't really have much of a support system in place. Nobody had even talked about that. And I didn't really have anything to compare it to. I didn't know if this was normal, if this just is the way it was. So it really took me a few months to get settled in and realize, that there were options and a support network was really something I needed. And I think every mother needs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a huge thing when you finally reach that. And it's hard to find. And I know that's become kind of a passion of yours is to help women find that. I'm curious now that your kids are 9 and 11, what are they teaching you now? What are you learning about yourself as a mom and just as a woman?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the biggest thing that they're teaching me is flexibility. Um, I think I mentioned earlier, I kind of came into this motherhood wanting, to control everything and to, you know, help raise up children who had it all together, and everything was going to go right. But, my instinct was always to control and protect. Well, with the 9 and 11-year-old boys, and probably girls too, they're at that age where they're developing that urge to connect with other people and build their own social lives and build their own, they're becoming more independent. There's a lot of push and pull that's going on. I'm sure you guys can relate to that to a certain extent. So I really had to learn how to be a little bit more flexible as a mom. Like a year ago, my son, who's 11 now, a year ago, I would have been like, no way is he going to get a cell phone anytime soon. But as this year has gone on, I'm realizing so many of his friends have them and they're a way for the kids to connect now. And it's time he started to learn how to manage a cell phone. So, I decided against what I would have done maybe a year ago that I need to be more flexible here and start working with him with a phone and seeing how that would go and kind of starting to guide him toward that process of independence with an actual, with a smartphone.
Yeah.
So that's just an example. But, I think my biggest thing is I want to make sure that I'm raising kids who are, growing with compassion, that they are kind and that they're aware of the world around them. I see so many people who are just so glued to screens anymore that they're kind of forgetting that there's this world happening all around them. So I really want to make sure I'm raising my kids to acknowledge that and to be aware and to be connected with that, with other people and building those face-to-face relationship or friendships where they're, not only talking to people online, but talking to people in real life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Well, I just want to hear from Ashley too, being even more seasoned than us as far as having older kids. But I'm right at that stage, Christa, that you're talking about. You're kind of speaking. In fact, even before coming to this interview today, I kind of have like this pit in my stomach that I'm trying to like breathe through today, because I can see my 9-year-old. He had his first Cub Scout camping experience and just new things that he's exposed to, but we're right at that. I can just see where 10 and 11 is going. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like it's a total shift, isn't it? And he's still like, we're still in that kind of, I can protect him and like kind of feel like, this imaginary control that I have. But I see it's slowly going or fast actually going away. I feel it slipping away.
For all of my, my oldest is 23 and, cell phones weren't smartphones yet at this age of 10 and 11, where you are. And so kids got phones in 7th grade back then, kind of 7th and 8th grade. And they got them because they were walking to school, or we live in Prairie Village, walking to the village, walking into a friend's house. So it was really for safety. That you could call because you were a little bit more independent than you'd been just 1 year before. And so our cell phones started, he wasn't calling friends or texting friends, really just a short time ago. I mean, that was, 10 years ago. And then my son, who's 15, texting was very regular and Snapchatting and everything. And so in 6th grade, he's like, all my friends have a phone and I want a phone. And, I don't, I'm missing out on everything. My whole life, is flashing before me. And, so we got him, a phone a year earlier than what we did with Jake. And we noticed, he's using it for those same things, like you do need it for safety. They do need some independence at that kind of age of 10 and 11. They're starting to be walk 2 blocks away, where the year before I would have driven them or walked with them. But also, they just are kind of constantly on it. So it's a tricky transition, because I do think they need it. And it's also just in our, in 21st century, it is the way that they are connecting and knowing what's going on. But we, just this last weekend, we went to the lake and we all turned our phones off the whole 2 days that we were there. And, which is really uncommon for all of us. And, my husband and I both were like, they're creating deep and meaningful relationships, know, that they literally were like these little tiny kids again. And they kayaked out to this. I mean, their kayaking was like 1 foot deep. It wasn't like real kayaking. But they kayaked out to this like little island. They were in a boat that they could have been up to their ankle in water, but whatever. But they went out to this like little island and they found all these shelves, and they found like an abandoned turtle shell, and they went into the woods and came back filthy. And I mean, it literally made my heart feel like it was exploding because we don't do that very often.
Yes.
Yeah, that was long. That was long, guys. Sorry.
No, I love
that
it.
was a lot.
I think for Christa, like, tell us about, I think there's two things that we're talking about here. One is that push and pull, that's kind of forcing us as moms. We kind of can pretend we're in control, but really we have to keep learning how to surrender and be flexible. And so I'd love for you to talk about how you've noticed that transition, even from 9 to 11, what you're experiencing now, giving us tips as moms, like how do we breathe through that? And I know you said the social connection is really important. So talk us through that, and then we'll go and move into this conversation, because I know a lot of moms listening are like, yes, how do I manage this and create those deeper connections, but still teach them how to manage their phone? They need their technology as well. So, that's a lot. Go for it.
And I think Ashley really touched on that. I think it's about balance, which, that word gets overused a lot right now. And what does that really mean, right? But I think, with kids, they still need us to provide a sense of structure for them. So for my son, what I have learned, like my almost 10-year-old, so they're going on 10 and 12 this year. But like my 10-year-old, almost 10-year-old, I can see is not ready to have his own phone, just based on maturity level and the things I think I'm not sure how he would manage himself, because he's still learning to manage himself face to face in social types of situations. But I think just one of the things I think is helpful is to make it real clear from the beginning, I'm going to be checking your text messages. So make sure whatever you're texting is something that you're comfortable with me seeing. And, if I see something that I want to talk about with you, I will, because, text somebody at 10:30 at night when you're supposed to be plugged in at the main charging station, that kind of thing. I also think that creating sacred types of what I call sacred spaces, basically unplugged areas in your home, is a really healthy thing to do. Around the dinner table, that should be a time where you can sit and just chat with your family about the day and, what went on, what were their worries, what were the good things that happened that day, and, share those experiences. The dinner table is such a valuable place to really land as a family. Granted, many families are going in multiple directions around the dinner time hour, so a lot of times that's not possible. So, like one expert I was talking to, he recommends every single night before bed, everyone sits in the living room. Family room is definitely a place where if you don't have time to do dinner every night, a lot of families don't, then, meeting there for 10 to 15 minutes during the every evening, just to reconnect as a family with the television turned off and the phones put away, and just sitting there and talking about whatever is weighing on anybody's minds, or the good things that they're excited about for the next day. Things that may have gone on that day that are bothering them and they're not sure to do. A lot of times kids will really kind of come clean about things that are bothering them right before bedtime. That seems to be the time when they really want to talk, especially if it's just something one-on-one that they want to just share with you privately. So I think we really have to be conscious and open to those opportunities for them to just, talk to us and share with us what's going on in their lives, so that we can be more aware of what could be happening behind the scenes, if that makes sense. And eventually people are going to start talking about whatever is going on in their lives, what they want to talk about, what's weighing on their minds. So I think just really making sure as parents that we're creating those spaces for them and setting an example for them, putting away the phone when we're driving. They're watching our every move. And in many ways, they're going to model how we conduct ourselves with electronics in their own lives. So I think just being really conscious about that. Another thing I like to do personally is what I call a digital sabbath. And so every Sunday, I completely, I don't go online really, other than maybe to check my email once or twice that day. I really kind of just take that day to decompress. I don't check into social media. It's an opportunity to just unplug and be, take time for more creative types of pursuits. And I really encourage my kids to do that too. We don't do Xbox that day. And I really limit the amount of electronics because I want them outside playing. I want them out in the dirt,
Yeah.
and connecting with people in real life.
You're like kind of getting me excited here because, sitting around the dinner table is something that's important to us. We don't have the phone there. We try to talk, but that's still, even my oldest, it's not really he always waits till the end to share. And it's almost kind of forced sometimes, like, well, what was your highlight of the day? Or we talk about our days, but, then you get going. And for bedtime, a lot of times it's me. We might read a book or two. We might take turns, but it's not usually all of us together. And meeting in the family room, for me personally, that just sounds like a really special tradition to start. I'm excited to try that.
Yeah, we kind of have started doing that accidentally. We have like a little formal living room that has no electronics in it. And so a lot of times if I have a phone call, I'll move my body into that room. And when I'm finished, often, and usually there's at least one kid in that room ready to just visit. And that really is a room where there's nothing else going on. Nobody's cooking, nobody's watching a show, nobody does homework in that room, that it's just like a talking room, which is pretty great.
Another thing I would add to that is, if you're doing a lot of driving with your kids, particularly one-on-one, getting them to extracurricular activities and so forth, I find what I call windshield time, which I'm sure other people call it that too, but that's a great time too to connect because it's less intimidating, especially for a kiddo who has trouble with more eye contact, or maybe they want to bring up something that's bugging them, but they don't want to be looking at you face to face to talk about it. It's not as intense. So that's a great time to really visit with kids too and find out what's going on.
Yes, that's a good point about the eye contact. I do that sometimes with my oldest. We go on solo walks and just being in nature together. He's walking, he's climbing rocks, but I just love watching him and hearing him because he's so engrossed in what he's jumping and climbing on that he can just free flow what he wants to share. Yeah. It's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Walking, driving, and cooking together are the 3 times that I have found out by far the most stuff.
And cooking's a great one.
Yeah, cooking's great. Like everybody's cutting something, that you're chopping and having to look at that instead of, I do think a lot of conversations feel like an interrogation, and that's a lot of pressure. It feels like you're in therapy, like, how was your day, kid? That's a lot.
Right.
And where they just open up more. But some of the sweetest moments of my life are driving around, and then all of a sudden they share something that's been on their mind, or something happened at school that overwhelmed them that I know I wouldn't have gotten in any other situation. So it's pretty good. I think, just going back to the phone, having a no phone zone in the car, like if you're doing a road trip, like use your phone, use the electronics. But if you're driving 10 blocks away, like maybe don't have the phone on, because then you have an opportunity to have that deep and meaningful relationship. Yeah.
Since we're on the topic of the phone and technology, why don't we just kind of jump into, you talked about creating these sacred spaces and teaching how to manage when to use the phone and when to connect. How do we teach our kids who just want to be on their phone all the time, or who, as you talked about, kind of helping them create those social skills that they need to have conversations that aren't phone related, kind of walk us through what can we do to help them and us cope, I guess.
I think from the time they begin talking, as parents, we're teaching them things like manners, a very basic social skill that we teach our kids. The reason we teach them those is because it's our way of showing other people that we are sensitive to them, that we are aware that they are there, that we care about how they're feeling and around when we're around them. And so from the earliest stage, when we're teaching them things like please and thank you, they're learning how to interact with people and in a positive way. So I think that's where we begin, and we continue to really nurture those skills as they get older. Things like eye contact is something that kids need to learn. Not all kids that are naturals at that. It's like, look at me when you're talking to me, or if you're at a restaurant and you're teaching your kids how to order their own food, you're telling them, you're reminding them, don't forget to look at the server when you're making your order so that, she can hear you. Because a lot of times people can't hear you if they can't see your lips moving or you're not looking at them. It's polite. People feel validated when you're talking to them and looking at them, and they feel like they're being listened to. And that's what eye contact does for people. So that's another thing that, we can work with our kids on. Conversation skills, like we were just talking about, I think kids learn that just at home when they're learning to talk to their parents about things that they're concerned about, or working through issues that are going on at school or in their friendships. Making sure that they have play dates, that they're, getting together with kids in real time, in real life, whether that's at camps or play dates, preschool, school functions, things like that, so that you're really creating a balance between the online types of communication and the interpersonal, face-to-face types of communication. And a lot of times kids aren't really learning how to talk on the phone. Maybe it's teaching them how to call grandma and grandpa, and the difference between texting a grandparent versus texting a friend. My son is learning that you don't text in the same way to his grandmother as you would to his buddy, because she doesn't like
know
that.
what IDK means.
Right. And nor should she have to, because it's a sign of respect,
Right. Although I do have a 90-year-old friend, Larry, if you're out there listening, of course not. But he sends me, I taught him how to text, so now I get emojis all the time.
It's so funny.
My father loves emojis.
That's great.
I'm talking more like
we know what you're saying, and I think that's actually a
polite. And like emailing a teacher, yes. You wouldn't email a teacher in the same way you would email a friend, where you have all lowercase letters. You know what I mean?
Well, of course, and I do think that sometimes I forget, and maybe it's because where my kids are right now, I'm not thinking so much about that yet, but, even the simple, knowing how to call on a phone, because we just don't do it that often, or so often texting ourselves. So these are all really great tips.
Yeah, they're so good.
If your son or daughter wants to have a play date, to help them learn how to pick up the phone and call and schedule that for themselves. It really builds self-esteem and self-confidence when kids realize, hey, I can do this myself, and I may be a little nervous at first, but I did it, and now I feel really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so much that's like socially scary is just that, like, I've never done it before. And if we just have them ordering, just have them order, even if they're 4, then it does give them some independence, and they'll realize, it's just like anything that we're doing, that once you do it, it's not so scary or overwhelming to pick up the phone and have a conversation. You say that we are shortchanging ourselves emotionally and physically when we don't take care of our own needs, which ends up shortchanging our families. Will you just share a little bit about what you mean there?
Yeah, so I think, when we first have our babies, our lives revolve all around our babies, and that's the way it's supposed to be, right? We're there to meet their every need. They're totally dependent on us. And then slowly over time, we begin to give them a little more rein, a little bit more independence, giving them an opportunity to make their own test flights in life, if you will. But our kids the whole time are watching us and seeing how we live our lives. How are we managing our stress? The American Psychological Association does a annual survey of stress in America. And right now, I think we are the most stressed out we've been in over a decade. And women in particular are. And a lot of it is because we're not taking care of our own personal needs. And I think it really starts to happen at that time when we first have our babies. It's almost like we forget how to care for ourselves. if we're not being reminded and really reminded how important it is. Because when you're stressed and overwhelmed, you're no good to anybody. You can't be good for your kids if you're tired and burned out because you're not feeling good. Um, I kind of think of motherhood in a way as a marathon. I think sometimes we treat it like it's a sprint, but we really need to slow down and each step of the way make sure we're fueling ourselves, whether, that's with sleep, with good nutrition, with exercise. Those are all building blocks for managing the stress in our lives. But it's so easy, and I know this personally, how hard it is to take that time, especially when we're stressed out. We think that, we've got to push that down on the bottom of the list. But, I really think self-care needs to be looked at as less of a luxury and more of a need. I mean, we have to do that, or, if we don't make ourselves a priority, why would our kids turn around and make themselves a priority in life? They're going to see how we treat ourselves. And if we don't manage our stress, they're not going to manage their stress well. We have to show them how to do that. And I think through self-care and managing stress each day, doing the things that make us happy, I think that really shows our families that how much, when we care about ourselves, we really care about them too, because, we're energizing ourselves to take care of them. And we can't do that if we're completely drained.
Yes. So tell us, what do you do to refuel yourself and to manage your own stress?
Well, daily, I really do try hard to get exercise every day. I've never been like this awesome athlete or anything. I was the kid in school that hated PE, that would like take it pass fail in college. My friends still laugh at me about that. But, over the years, I've learned that I feel much better if I give myself 30 minutes to go for a walk or to do yoga or, go do some weightlifting at the gym. I really figured this out last year. Believe it or not, you'd think this is kind of late in motherhood to figure this out, but I decided to invest in a personal training session, like a package of personal training sessions. And I kept thinking to myself, oh, how am I going to have time to do this? Well, the interesting thing was I went ahead and did it, and it was an hour a day, and it really wasn't that much time out of my whole day. But what I found out was I was more energized. I was in a better mood. I felt better about myself, and everything just flowed easier in my life. So I think we have to really acknowledge those things that bring us joy, or that re-energize us. For me, every day, one thing I do pretty much every single day is I write and I read. Every single night before bed, I read a novel. It helps me unplug from the world and it makes me happy. And so it's just become a daily ritual for me. And then usually I feel off if I haven't done at least some writing, whether that's journaling or even just making a list for the next day. So just little things that don't really necessarily take a lot of time, but make me feel good and make me feel grounded. I think that's something we all need to really identify.
Yes. Do you have any particular morning ritual that you do? Do you try to write in the morning, or is it different each day?
It tends to vary each day. I typically my kids are in a carpool, but I do the morning carpool. So after I drop the kids off, I'll either go to the gym or I'll come home and I'll just sit down and write. Usually I try not to get onto social media first thing in the morning or anything that's going to rile me up.
Yes.
I might check in with the news headlines, but that's about it. And then I just really kind of try to focus on whatever it is that I want to get done that day as far as writing goes. So that would probably be my biggest ritual, that, having a cup of coffee and just kind of settling in, and then making sure I give myself breaks. As a writer, you sit a lot during the day. So I have to really remind myself to get up, walk around, take some deep breaths, and get grounded.
Yeah, I know that you locally have found it just really important to create groups of like-minded women. Will you talk to us about the importance of friendships and how not only social media friends, but friends face-to-face, and how that can be enriching during like the lonely and sometimes isolating part of motherhood?
Yeah, absolutely. I think loneliness, they're saying, is deadly. Isolation is deadly. It's what causes things like obesity and heart disease and depression and anxiety, are all things that can kind of begin with just not having any kind of a support system in place and feeling very alone in life. So I think for mothers especially, it's so important to be able to find those groups where you really feel a strong connection with people. Not only does it, I think we all know what it feels like to go and have coffee with a friend or lunch or have cocktails with some girlfriends. You just come away feeling really, really good. You've got a chance to laugh, and what's going on with your body is it's kind of going after that cortisol stress hormone. It's reducing those levels of stress in your body. And you actually are improving your immune system when you do that. So it's a really important self-care type of ritual to be able to spend a little time in conversation with a friend. Even if it's just picking up the phone and calling a friend, hearing that voice, I think really makes a difference in just, it puts things in perspective. It gets you out of your head, and even having a seasoned mother to talk to say, I don't know what I'm doing here. What do you think? A lot of times they'll turn around and look at you like, oh, that's nothing. Listen to this. Or, this is how I manage that particular situation. And sometimes it's just good to hear that you're not crazy. You're not alone, that other moms go through these similar types of parenting issues. Or if you just want to talk about, what you're dreaming about, in your life, it's so nice to have a sounding board sometimes.
Speaking to us, because even like I said, before we started, I had this pit in my stomach. I've been contemplating some things, and we need that time too. But it's always so inspiring when you can speak to other women and get that, or whoever, to get that support, that where you just feel like, okay, I'm not the only one going through this. There's other women who've walked this path. They have, inspiration for me, or whatever it is. It's just so important to find the courage to find the group, or the person. And
I think it's in our DNA. Centuries ago, even a few hundred years ago, women were surrounded by other women. We had babies, and we had aunties and mothers and extended family, people all around us to help support the mother, mothering the mother. And so much of that has disappeared in our modern culture. But our bodies haven't really changed. We still need that sort of thing. We haven't really evolved away from that. Yeah. And I can't imagine what life would be like if we did. That would seem very robotic to me.
Yes. And I think, as we're talking about social media and how things have changed too, it's, as you know, and you have a Facebook group that you'll tell us about, and Ashley and I connect with a lot of people through this podcast and online. I feel like some of the closest people I know haven't met face to face, because we've taken they've taken courses with me or whatever, and we've gotten to know each other really well. And so you can create those connections, but on the same token, you can have a lot more to compare your life to what other people share to post, or just what's out there, anything you want to look up, it's just in your face. And I think there's so much pressure on moms these days to keep up, to strive for this perfect that there is none. We're just constantly battling that. And so I think to find groups where you feel like, wow, I don't have to be perfect. I can share these flaws I'm going through. I can tell you that I let my kids watch movies all last week and I'm feeling horrible about it, but I know I'm really not a bad mom, that whatever it is, to speak it, and to just, again, know what you need to stay connected to that, and then to be brave and find the people who get it and get you.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that is the beauty of social media, is it is a way to kind of cut through and find those groups, those people that think like you and or that have a similar philosophy about life or motherhood. I think that's really important, and we're really lucky in many ways to have that as an option too, to kind of complement the in-person relationships that we build.
Oh,
Well,
I agree.
Yeah, I say a lot, on my just mom support group, Facebook, Oh Mamas, that I think about what it would have been like to be up in the middle of the night when I felt so alone, to be able to turn on Oh Mamas and say, anybody awake? And there's always somebody posting every single minute of the day. And what a relief that would have been to me, that to have truly known that I'm not all alone, that there's another mom that's up with a crying baby, or another mom that's up nursing right now for the 25th time.
Right.
Yeah, that if for no other reason, that those make us feel less isolated and less like I'm the only one.
Yes.
We're not.
Well, and I think it saves time too. I mean, I'm reflecting back 9 years ago when I was just like thirsty for people that would help me like feel less crazy. And I remember going to some, breastfeeding support groups at the hospital, and my baby wasn't sleeping at all, and he was, spitting up everywhere, and nothing felt easy or right. And I was wishing I could find that person to say, I get it. I'm in the boat with you. And a lot of what I got in a lot of those groups were, oh, my baby sleeps 12 hours every night. And, it took me all this sifting and searching and play date after play date to find that one person where you're like, I'm never letting you go.
I know, right?
Really. And so I think what's really cool now, especially about how we can bond and connect in social media, is that you can find a group and already kind of sift through all that, as you said, and we get to that place where there's just more of those like-minded people all together. Wow, there's great. So many of them.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, as we wrap up the show, we always like to ask, what does being a mindful mama mean to you?
Well, I think of it as it means I engage with the world on my terms, based on what my needs are for me personally and for my family. It means practicing gratitude and being present in the moment as a mother. It also means, for me personally, it means using my creativity, through my writing to really connect and help us flourish as mothers, I think, from a community standpoint. So I look at it on several different levels, from the personal standpoint to the family to the community. I think that to me feels like what it means to be a mindful mama.
That's really great.
It's really great.
What's cool about that is it kind of wraps up our conversation here today, because if you're looking for like a blueprint on how much social media should your kids be doing, how many hours should we all be on our phones? Well, we're not going to, we can seek that, and there's people who are going to tell you that. But what I love what you're doing, Christa, is you're saying just get in touch with what works best for you and your family. And it's an everyday kind of ebb and flow. What's working, what's not, what feels good, what doesn't. But ultimately, it's like keeping what's most important, which is that deep connection to you, yourself, and deep connection to your family. And that is a beautiful description of what being mindful is for me personally. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you bet. Yeah, I totally agree. I think, it goes back to the flexibility element. We have to do what's right for us and for our families, and that can look different from one family to the next.
Yes. Well, tell us before we wrap up, would you tell us the titles of your 2 books and where our listeners can learn more about you, and then also about the giveaway that you're offering?
Yeah, you bet. So I have 2 books. The first one is called Confidently Connected, A Mom's Guide to a Satisfying Social Life. And this book really helps moms build and sustain a thriving, balanced social life that supports their emotional health. It really comes from some of my experiences as a new mom and kind of creating a social life for myself that I felt good about. And then the other book is called Happy, Healthy, and Hyperconnected, Raise a Thoughtful Communicator in a Digital World. And it's a guide for parents who are interested in nurturing a versatile set of social skills in their, I call them digitally charmed kids because they really are charmed by all things digital.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm going to do is I want to put together a bundle, both books, and then I also have some conversation gems that I'd like to add with that. And what those are, they're just real tactile little stones with questions in them. Kids love, my kids especially. I think a lot of kids do. They like to play these conversation games. Like it's similar to Chat Pack, where you pull a question and ask everybody in the family the question, and that's basically what these questions are. Kind of gets conversation going. So just something kind of fun to throw in there with the books.
Oh, very fun. Well, good. Well, we'll put all of that information on the mindfulmamamovement.com show notes for this show. And Christa is a member of our Facebook group where she can join in the conversation. So if you have questions specifically for Christa, join our Facebook group. Just look up groups Mindful Mama Movement, and that's where we'll also be giving you details on how to enter to win the bundle. And then I know you have a Facebook group too, Christa. Can you tell everyone where they can find you on Facebook?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a group called Confidently Connected Moms, and that's where I share a lot of my writing work. I also share articles that I think are interesting for moms, for parents, and sometimes I'm seeking sources there for stories I'm working on. I do write for a lot of national and regional publications. And then occasionally I'll feature guest hosts there who can conduct free educational workshops that tend to be of interest among the moms in the group. So yeah, welcome to join that.
Okay, well, I am going to gather the family into the living room tonight for our our sacred connection time. I'll let you know how it goes.
I know.
Yeah, do.
Well, thank you so much, Christa, for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks so much, mamas, for listening to this episode. To enter Christa's giveaway, visit our group page on Facebook. Go to Mindful Mama Movement and ask to join our group and look for the post for the giveaway. If you're listening to this show way after it's come out live, then check out our website, mindfulmamamovement.com, and you can check out the show notes so you can learn more about Christa and where to order her books. Thanks so much again for listening, and we'll see you next week.